we're going to go over solving equations really quick. I'll introduce two different methods. I know that you'll probably only like one of them, but I'm going to introduce both of them just in case. So our goals for today are to be able to solve a linear equation. That's it. That's all we're trying to do here. Remember, a linear equation is something that has something along the lines of x plus something is equal to another thing. So in general, we're going to have our x's, they're not going to have any exponents on them. They're just going to be simple standalone x's. You can have many of them, but you're still going to have them. So let's go through this equation solving process, or we could also call it an algorithm. So these are the steps you need to do every time that you start to solve an equation. First, you're going to need to identify the variable. This is so that you know what you're actually looking for. There's some times that you'll have something with, like, say, pi involved. Pi isn't a variable, even though it's a letter. So you'll want to know what you're actually solving for so that you can work with the things that are letters that are actually a constant. We're going to simplify each side after we've identified it, and we're just going to combine the like terms that are on the same side of the equation. We're going to move the variable to one side if we can. So we want to have the variable on one side to make our lives easier. We're going to isolate the variable, and the way that we're going to do that is we're going to basically undo everything that was done to it, and we're going to plug, chug, and check. What this means is that in the end, we're going to plug in any numbers that we need to, we're going to chug it out with our calculator, and we're going to check by taking that number, plugging it back into our original equation, and seeing if it makes a true statement. Now, as like a sidebar, it's kind of like fixing a leaking pipe, because when you have a leaking pipe, you're going to identify the problem. There's a leak. You're going to see like where the pipe is actually leaking. You're going to turn off the water to simplify the problem so that you don't get really wet. You're going to get the leak onto one side. So you want to say, like, at what point of the pipe am I not going to be touching anything? Do I not need to replace, so that you can get it, so you can get like an idea of what direction you need to be working on. You're going to isolate the leak, so find out what part of the pipe is actually leaking, so you only have to replace the part that's leaking and not the entire thing. And you're going to remove it, you're going to replace it, and you're going to turn it on, just like you're going to plug and chug and check. So these are the things, this is like why this is important, because you can apply these skills in real life when you're actually trying to solve problems that you're going to have in everyday life. So we're going to do the balancing method first. And the way that we need to think of it is like with this rock balance that we have here. We need to make sure that we keep everything in balance, otherwise it's going to fall apart. So if we add a rock onto one side, if we're to leave it on just one side, then it would be unbalanced and we'd see this entire thing tumble apart. So what we need to do is we need to keep adding a rock on the other side when we do it on to one. So basically what we're doing is we're going to pretend that our equation is an imaginary scale. And once we have this imaginary scale, so what we're going to do is we're going to pretend it is an imaginary scale. And so everything that we do to one side, we have to do it to the other. Just like this rock picture, this rock like balance that we have here. You're trying to undo everything that's been done to the variable. Let's go through an example really quick, because this can be a little bit confusing. We're going to solve this equation, and we're going to solve for n. So we have minus 6n plus 5 is equal to 2. Now we're going to go through our algorithm first. We're going to identify the variable. So our variable is right here. It's actually just the n. So we have the n on the 6n, and that's going to be our variable. Next, we're going to want to simplify anything that we can. So we're going to look at just right here, and we're going to notice that we can't simplify anything on this side, so we're going to leave it alone. We're going to look on the other side. That 2 is all alone. We can't do anything to him as well, so we're going to leave it there. Next, we're going to get the variable onto one side, which it conveniently already is. It's right here. You don't have an n on the right side, so you're good. Then what we're going to do is we're going to try and isolate it. So what we're going to do is undo everything that has been done to the variable. In general, it's easier to reverse or get rid of your additions and your subtractions before you get rid of your multiplications and divisions. So my general advice is to always go for the easy thing first and undo addition and subtraction. So we have minus 6n plus 5 is equal to 2. We want to get rid of that minus 5 or plus 5 because that's the easiest thing that we can get rid of on this side to get our n all alone. Our variables want to be all alone. They're like loners and they don't want to have anybody to deal with. They don't even like each other. So we want to get rid of this 5. What we're going to do is we're going to unadd the 5. And the way that you unadd a 5 is you subtract it. But we've only done it to one side, so our equation is now unbalanced. In order to make it work, what we need to do is unadd it to the other side as well. So we subtracted these. Going through the process, we're going to have negative 6n is equal to negative 3. Our n, however, still has a buddy. It has that negative 6. And so what we need to do is we need to unmultiply that negative 6 from that n. And the best way to unmultiply is to divide. So we're going to divide by negative 6. And remember that we did it on one side, so we have to do it on the other side because we have to keep things balanced. So these negative 6's will cancel out, and we'll be left with n is equal to negative 3 over negative 6, which is going to be equal to 1/2. And that's our final answer for this equation. Now we're going to go through it do, undo. And just as a warning, it's not like this isn't the way that I learned it, so I'm not the best at explaining it. If you want to try this method, but you feel like I didn't do a good job, I 100% am okay with you going onto YouTube and searching do, undo method, linear equations, and getting a better explanation of it. But I'll try and explain it the best way that I can. So basically, we want to find everything that has been done to the variable. So we're going to follow the order of operations to do these things to the variable. Then we're going to undo them to the other side. And this one comes with a handy chart. So we have our equation here. And here's our handy chart. On one side we have do, on the other side we have undo. So we're going to go down the chart for doing things. The first thing that was done to this equation, as in if we're saying this equation in a vocal way, we would say it's 2 times x minus 3. So the first thing that was done to this equation was that it was multiplied by 2. Then we have the minus 3, so it lost our 3 from it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go sweep along this way, and we're going to go up. So we're going to undo everything backwards of the way that it was done. So starting at the negative 3, the minus 3, the way to undo minus 3 is we're going to add a 3. And the way to undo multiply by 2 is divide by 2. And we're going to go through these steps on this side so that we have x is equal to negative 7. I'll write it down here. X is equal to negative 7. And then we'll undo these steps. So we'll add 3. So we'll get, oh dear. If we go through it, we'll get negative 4. And then we're going to divide that answer by 2. So our final answer down here is going to be x is equal to negative 2. We can plug it in real quick. Negative 2 times 2, and that's going to give us a 4, or a negative 4. Negative 4 minus 3 is going to be negative 7. Negative 7 is equal to negative 7, so we're good. Let's do one quick do-undo example. Here is our lovely chart, and we have to go through the process of reading this out and going through our doing. So remember, we're going to go down as we do them. So the first thing that we can read this as is negative 6 times n plus 5. The first thing that was done to the variable n. So you notice it's the same thing. So we want to go through all the steps, but for time, I'm just going to say we already did them before on the last example. So we're just going to jump straight into it. So for our do, we want to say what was the first thing done. So negative 6 times n was the first thing. So we're going to do negative 6. And that's a multiply sign. And the next thing that was done is we added 5 to that side. In order to undo that, we have to subtract 5. And in order to undo So we're going up and around. Oh, sorry. We're going up and around. So in order to undo the times by 6, we have to divide by 6. So what's going to happen? We have our n is equal to 2, but we have to go through these steps. So we're going to add our 5 to it. Now n is equal to 7, so we're going to check that off. Now we have to divide. That's actually wrong. Woo. We're not adding 5, we're subtracting 5. And this is why it's important to write down each step so you know what's going on. So we're subtracting 5, so now we have n is equal to -3. Now we can check it. Our next step is divide by 6. So we're going to divide this by 6. But is it positive or negative? It should be a negative. So that results in n is equal to -3 over -6. The negatives cancel, and we can reduce that down to 1/2. And that's the same answer we had before. We plug this into check. 1/2 times -6 is going to be -3. -3 plus 5 is 2. 2 is equal to 2, so that's a true statement, and that means that we did everything right. So now it's going to be your turn. I want you to do these quick check equations. So I just want you to solve each equation doing whatever method you feel best. If you want to do the balance method, great. If you want to do the do-undo method, great. If you want to do a little of both, that's fine. So just solve these equations using our algorithm and whatever method you want to, and have fun with it.